Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. Today, I am very excited to get to introduce you to Steve Taylor. He's a partner with a franchise consulting company, and we are going to talk everything franchise today, the do's, the don'ts, the hows, and the whys. And so with that, welcome to the studio, Steve.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Excited to have you. And you're joining us, I can see on the video anyway, from the Bay Area. You are in Pleasanton. Is that where you reside?
That is correct.
Excellent. I grew up in Belmont, in Belmont Heights, actually. So I think maybe an hour about.
It depends on the traffic. Right. That's a beautiful area.
Could be 2.5 hours. It could be 40 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, I miss that area of the world. I've been here since 79, but
oh, wow.
My dad was in San Mateo County, or maybe San Jose, with Litton Electronics. Way back in the mid-'60s. And then in almost 20 years later, maybe longer than that, he was sent out here as VP to open a plant right here. And I think maybe a half mile from where my studio is, which is super exciting. He's long since retired, but we have our California roots all throughout the state. Well, let's have you introduce yourself. I know you have an impressive background in the Navy, and you're smiling and laughing. I can already tell there's some humility there. But please take a few moments to introduce yourself and your background, and then we'll get more into the conversation around franchise consulting and the company you represent.
Sure. It's called self-deprecation, I think, but there's probably some humility in there as well. Real quick background. I grew up in the thriving metropolis of Fresno. So I'm familiar with the weather in Phoenix. I think that's probably very similar. But then real quick, funny story. I saw Star Wars as a kid, and that really resonated with me. And my older brother had gone to the Naval Academy. My dad had gone to the Naval Academy, and I wanted to leave the farm and go to the academy. And so when I was a very young man, I that really resonated with me. So I went to the Naval Academy, graduated, served all over the world, ended up in the Bay Area, and I lived kind of south of Belmont at a place called Mountain View. And then a girl got involved, and she wanted to move to Pleasanton. So here we are 23 years later. We've got 3 kids. We've got 3, I've got twins that are sophomores in high school, and an older sister that's a senior in high school, and been here ever since that girl got involved, who, like I said, is now my wife. Can't figure that out.
I love it.
But professionally, I left the Navy, worked in industry, had some successes, had some less than successful experiences. About 13 years ago, I was given the opportunity to start my own business. And I'd been looking for businesses for a long time. And it always seemed to be, Joe's Barbershop, where it's all about Joe, or, Frank's, shoe repair, let's say. And it was all about Frank, right? And I couldn't really see myself doing those things. And someone introduced me to franchising. And it actually was a brand that was very veteran, military centric. And they kind of explained to me what a franchise was about, right? So that intrigued me. I eventually invested in a franchise, purchased it. About 2.5 years ago, I sold a majority interest. And during that time of owning and operating that franchise, I center what I really enjoy, what really drives me, is helping people and helping customers, helping employees. I got to do some things. When I was in the Navy, I joined the Navy, I thought I'd change the world, change the galaxy, right? And I figured out as a very junior officer, you really can't change much of anything. But as a business owner, you can. And I got to help some people out, some real, people down on their luck, a couple people right out of prison, and got to help some of my subcontractors become business owners in their own right. And that really intrigued me. And number of years ago, a guy I used to work a long time ago say, hey, why don't you partner with me? I've got this new business and it's called the Franchise Consulting Company. And this is what we do. And I'm like, that sounds like what I really enjoy doing. So,
and I'm kind of doing already, right? Helping people.
Right. So like I said, I sold my majority interest. I held on to part of my business to a few months ago and then sold that final bit. And been working with people, both people interested in investigating business ownership and also people that have businesses that want to discuss what it would mean to become a franchisor. In other words, turn their business into a franchised business. So it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm very fortunate to be located in Pleasanton, and I get to do what I enjoy to do, and get to probably the most extraordinary thing about it is all the people I get to work with. I tend to work with a lot of veterans, and not exclusively, but I'm constantly amazed by the stories I hear and the people I've connected with through a shared interest in business ownership. And wow, just I don't want to mention names. I'm not by nature a name dropper, but there have been some people I really admire that I've connected and had conversations, and feel like I could call them, pick up the phone anytime and call them. So
I'm sure they're grateful and deeply appreciative, coming the opposite direction as well. What makes franchising so attractive? I have my own kind of predetermined idea of it. Owning Phoenix Business RadioX, I'm a licensed partner with the bigger company Business RadioX. So we're a little, the way I would describe it is that we're a little looser than a franchise. I have a lot of autonomy for decision making. I know at least with an older franchise model, there's often some real set structure for, how to do things. But even our parent company has looked at franchise model, and I think they've worked with someone, similar to yourself, to say what is the best route to go. So, how would you describe what makes owning a franchise so attractive, maybe to somebody, a veteran, as an example, or even just a general lay person who may not otherwise have ever thought about business ownership?
I think I'm going to put my sales and marketing hat on a little bit. So. I like to describe myself as the anti-salesperson, but that's not necessarily true. But getting back to your question, there are a number of factors that makes a franchise attractive. First, there's all different types of relationships when it comes to franchise between franchisors and the franchisees. The franchisees being the individual owners, the ZORs or the franchisors being the parent organization. And I'll just throw this out there. Something like McDonald's, who's been around a long time, where it's pretty difficult to get a franchise. They have a very, very rigid contract between them and where they dictate suppliers. I mean, to straws and napkins, and I'm not real familiar, but then there's a continuum, right, to maybe a business to business type franchise where it could be, very loose. It could be a set of operating manuals and not much more. You determine, your suppliers, for example, and there's everything in between, right?
And the price tag varies too, right? When we talk about a franchise like McDonald's, Starbucks, those sorts of things, right? The price tag could be pretty hefty. But I've also seen some franchises that the buy-in, the startup, is very nominal for what can really end up being an extremely lucrative business.
That's kind of where I come in, and what I do is I work with people, and a lot of people say, well, what's so special about you? Why should I talk to you? And frankly, I come from my client's standpoint, is I get to know them, and we go through some. There's a couple internet type survey. I mean, real basic stuff, but I spend time trying to understand what the goals and objectives are, what the resources. I mean, to get into McDonald's, again, to use that extreme example, it's very expensive and it's very exclusive. And my understanding is they have an application process, and then you wait until one becomes available for you to purchase, or a territory becomes, and then you don't have a lot of, there's a lot of rigidity built into the system, which they can afford to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas what I do, I work with about 300, somewhere between 350 and 400 different client companies. And, I'm trying to understand what the client, a lot of clients don't want to move where they are, or they live, let's say they live in the Northeast somewhere and they've always wanted to move to Phoenix. So I get to know them. I get to know what do you have to invest? What's your net worth? What are your goals and objectives? What are your hobbies? Do you like dog grooming, or do you like pets, for example? Because if you don't, I'm probably not going to suggest a veterinary clinic or a pet grooming facility or franchise, mm-hmm. right? So then I back into, and I just via my research, I back into 5 or 6 opportunities that make sense for my clients. And then we have a discussion, we start making introductions. And then, at that point I become more of a sounding board, more of a coach. I don't, my clients never see an invoice for me, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm compensated. That's another common question. I'm compensated like a real estate broker or a contingency-based headhunter. I get paid a success fee, essentially. But did I address your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You handled a lot of questions in that. Yeah, I hear you being the connector, right? You're listening for what are their interests, what are their goals, what is their purpose, and then you're coming up with several opportunities for them to consider based on what you're hearing them say. And then you make those introductions and get them to be a sounding board and a coach and a guide along the way. I hope that's a decent summary. But
that's much better than I.
No,
my summary.
It's the Reader's Digest version of what I got to hear you say. So and I know there are other franchise consulting firms out there. What would you say makes you guys different when someone does ask you that? Why you? Why the franchising company?
I'd say a couple things. I think the people, my peers, my partners, we all come from a position of experience, and that's not always the case. A lot of people see this as a sales play, and I don't. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm passionate. Again, to just take a step. What drives me is I happen to think that the U.S., the United States, America could be well served by a new generation of business owners. And that really informs a lot of what I do. And I work with a lot of different people, everybody from new immigrants to multi-generational military veterans. I'll tell you, anybody who has a stake in this country wants it to succeed. And I think what we need to do is create more of a population with a significant stake in the economy, in the business, in our communities.
Yep.
And I think we would be well served by that. So getting back to your question, I think a lot of my peers, a lot of my partners have that same purpose-driven vision for the country, for the business world. And and we frankly, we come from experience. We're not, a study was, I want to say the average franchise experience in our company is something like 25, 26 years. And, there's some, some newer guys, but there are also a lot of people that have been in the business a long time and want to start giving back. And that's what's motivating me. It's a great place, great group of people to work with.
You're speaking our language. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I've got Conscious Capitalism of Arizona logo here. We do their People and Profit show, and I'm a member of the Arizona chapter. And it speaks to everything that you're talking about, right? So it's this international movement started by Whole Foods, Dave Mackey, the Container Store, folks like yourself and like me who know that when we teach someone to do something and we give people the ability to learn, grow, and prosper, we all benefit, right? So in conscious capitalism, there are 4 tenets, one of which is that look for the win for all stakeholders, whether that be your client, your customer, your employee, your vendor, your partner, the community. Always look for whatever answer you need, look for a way to create a win for everybody. And that's really what you and I are discussing. It's interesting. I'm sending my son to a spring break camp. I have a 14-year-old still at home with me. And a friend of mine, Linda Bishop, who runs a nonprofit organization called aspiringyouth.org, they have a camp up north, and they're taking kids up for 4 days, all expenses paid due to tax credit. And they're teaching these kids how to become entrepreneurs, how to become business owners. Now, whether or not he'll choose to do that, he likely will because he's my son, right? But he, like you with, your military family, like you were just destined to do it because that's what everybody did. And you saw the value and the love and the valor in that. So he'll go spend 4 days doing axe throwing and rope climbing and all that stuff. And I can't remember the philosophy that they use, but there is I think it's out of a university, a program put together for accelerated business planning that middle schoolers and high school kids can really latch onto within a few days. So they'll have to present a product or a business and a service and price it out and all that stuff. So again, just getting them excited about what they're doing. And conscious capitalism provides a lot of those opportunities as well. It's based off of the EOS system, Entrepreneur Operating System, if you're familiar with that as well. So I had read that in your bio, this love and this deep appreciation for community and helping people get the information and the opportunities that they need. And that's why I opened Business RadioX for that same reason. So I really appreciate that approach to life as well. Can we circle back to veterans again? We've had the privilege of hosting several veteran-related programs out of Phoenix Business RadioX. One of them was with ESGR, the Employee Service Guard and Reserve, in addition to the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. And so we've had a chance to talk to a lot of business owners who are veterans themselves. And I know, again, from what I've heard from these folks, why they make for great business owners and or great employees. But I'd love to hear from your perspective, Steve, why you believe that as well.
That's such a broad question. I don't know where to start. So
we've got time.
Let me throw a couple other things. First, what kind of motivates me? And then I'll get into that. What motivates me is I'll be very I got challenged by a client, and this guy was a very successful Army officer, and he had done very, very well in the Army, and he was destined for great things, and he had an ill son, and he took a step back, and I think that's very common. It was common in my parents' life. We had an ill son, or they had an ill son. Took a step back, and he eventually retired from the Army, probably before his potential. So my whole point is, he came to me, he says, Steve, I've been investing in real estate. I've been investing in this. I've been investing in that. And, all these companies say we support our veterans, but I'm not seeing it. What I'm seeing is, we'll hire the veterans, and, you and I know they're hiring good employees, but when they say they invest or they support our veterans, what does that really mean? Isn't there someone who truly wants to partner with me? So, I've been, if I was in the civilian world, I would have been making, 5X, X being what I'm making here. I could put money aside. I don't have the capital, all that. So fast forward. So all this time I've been challenged to find those companies, those entities that really do support veterans in more of a real way. And I found a couple opportunities. One, a family office who, not for completely altruistic reasons, but they see veterans with 20, 30 years experience operating, winning, achieving as good bets for chief executive officers. And they want to expand their franchises across the country. And they want to put chief executives in each region and give them some equity to start out with, but allow them to earn out a more comprehensive equity stake in these companies. So that's one. So getting back to your original question, the premise of a franchise is very simple. What you're doing is you're renting or paying royalties in exchange for some intellectual property, some branding, some type of product, perhaps, or something like that. And you're not creating anything, or you're given the business to operate with all the tools necessary to be successful. Typical military guy or gal is going to outwork anyone else. I'm sorry.
They're used to that,
and they're also going to follow a plan and be comfortable with operating in the fog of war. And again, anybody who's been in business knows any business plan rarely survives the first day of operations, much like any war plan doesn't survive the first shot, right? So that's the basic premise. I love working with veterans because I think I speak the same language, but they're very direct as a whole, and they're comfortable with direct response. So I think there's a multitude of reasons why they make good franchise owners, but those are certainly the top three for me.
Yes, and that's synonymous with what I've heard people say on our shows, again, covering a variety of topics. They're so used to routines, plans, project management, taking orders, having things set for them to a degree, right? And then being able to run with it, and certainly loyal. Yeah.
Well, can I, if I could just flip that.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people say, well, who wouldn't make a good franchise owner? Steve, you're so up on this, right? And I use Elon Musk, okay? And I admire the heck out of that guy. But he's always breaking the processes, turning things on their heel or on their head. And that's not what you want in a franchise owner. You want a franchise owner that uses the business as it is, makes improvements along the way, of course, in using channels. But McDonald's, again, I mean, there are a multitude of examples, but when you're buying a franchise, you're buying a proven way, or better be a proven way of making money. McDonald's makes money. If I wanted a gourmet hamburger, well, let me ask you, would you go to McDonald's? If you're just craving a great meat and potato, you don't go to McDonald's. You go because your 5-year-old wants a Happy Meal, or you know what you're going to get.
Or I'm craving that twice a year Big Mac taste.
Right.
But I know what to expect, right? As a customer, I know what to expect. I know what I'd want to go there for. I know what I would not want to go there for. And they've been around forever. So it's a great example of a franchise that if an owner wants to come into that situation, they're not going to want to reinvent the wheel. There's no reason to, because it's, as you said, a proven system. Before I opened the studio, I was an executive director for a Primrose Preschool. I don't know if you're familiar with that franchise.
I am.
Yeah, and I had been invited to be the executive director. The owners for this particular location, one was an occupational therapist in schools, and her husband was a banker, and they had been saving up, and much like our conversation, they were ready to do something on their own that they could have a legacy for their kids, and weren't familiar with business ownership or education for that matter. And so when they hired me, I had just come out of the school district as an assistant principal and teacher, and had been training teachers and that sort of thing. A little bit of experience with business. What I love so much about the Primrose brand is that they were really always looking for the best interest in the families, the students, right? And as an executive director, I had everything at my fingertips, as you mentioned, the manual, the guide, the branding, the marketing, pricing, you name it. And so it made my job very easy. And it was my first experience into the franchise world. And I was super impressed, right? Again, the price tag for a franchise like that, brick and mortar, a school, and that sort of thing is, I'm sure quite a bit higher than many other franchise opportunities. So let's segue, if we can, with that in mind. What I guess I'm trying to ask, are the fees and the royalties, does it take away from the opportunity to make a business non-competitive? I would imagine it depends on what your goals are. I think there's a lot of great benefits to it, but do you ever have anybody ask that? Like, am I just going to be spending, money on fees and royalties and not ever making any money? I guess that question probably comes up.
It does, and and it's funny. I very occasionally, and by very occasionally, I mean maybe once a year, someone says, "Oh, I would never buy a franchise," and you're paying through your nose, and blah 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 blah. And I when I was early on, I was like hungry, and I was trying to engage and all that. I try and engage and explain why it wasn't that much money. Now those people, they've made up their mind if they're interested in learning more,
Yep.
So, I mean, I guess that speaks to my growth as a business owner.
I can so relate to that. If you're interested, excellent. Let's have a conversation. If you're poking holes or kicking tires and you just want to challenge me, you're likely not my people.
Yeah. Let me just cite one example.
Please.
So I own a flooring retailer. And we paid royalties and advertising funds, and there's a franchise cost. Someone, and I don't, I wish I could remember the name of the company, but they did a study, and what they found out was we were paying approximately 1% more than if we could have done all this stuff ourselves.
Wow.
Okay, so it's 1% more. I guess it is a little more expensive, but what did I get from that 1%? I got a whole bunch of fellow franchise owners that I could turn to. They weren't competitors in the business. They had very similar businesses. It was a group of people that had very common experience with me. I could turn to. I mean, to this day, I could pick up the phone at almost any time and have one pick up and answer a question. What else? There's a corporate infrastructure above. I'll give you another example, a very, maybe not a large food concept, but pretty good size food concept with over 100 units. When the pandemic hit, within the month, they had developed an app, an online ordering app. They didn't have one before that. And they'd rolled it all out to all their franchise owners. Suddenly, all these franchise owners who had the only way to serve was go in the store, all that. Suddenly, they could take online order apps. They set up a table outside their front door. They put them out there. And I was talking to a local owner, and she's like, "I had my best month ever. And guess what? I don't have to clean my dining room. I don't need to ring my cash register because all these are paid in advance. I'm only using a third of the space. I don't use my dining room now. So my costs, the next 3 I buy or I develop aren't going to have a dining room, right?" So that's another benefit. I mean, we could talk about costs and, royalties and, that's 5% or that's 10% every month. But honestly, if you're honest about it, it's not an extraordinary amount more, and what you get in return is more than worth the value.
And it makes me think back. Yeah, it makes me think back to those of us that are coaches and consultants, and when people challenge our fee structure, which I've had in the past, and like you, I've grown in my leadership and my ability to really clearly articulate the benefits in working with someone like me. It's my education, it's my experience, it's the things that worked, it's the things that didn't work. It's, all that comes with a franchise. Again, it's a proven system. a proven brand that works, that you can get your muscle and your legacy behind. And for that, there's great value in that for sure. Steve, how do people find you when they are ready to have that conversation? Does it just start off with a conversation to kind of poke around and see if it makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, my process is pretty simple. I mean, I like to have about a 15-minute, maybe a half-hour conversation, kind of outline my process, answer any initial questions. I have 2.5 rules, and they bear repeating. If you're interested in investigating, I can't promise you what the results are going to be if you decide to invest or not, but you need 3 to 5 hours a week. If you don't have 3 to 5 hours a week to devote to that, probably not a good time to start. The second thing I insist on is we've got to have clear communication. And by that, I mean, if you're unhappy, let me know. I don't want to, the kids use the word, ghosting, right? I don't want to be ghosted. Let's, worst case, you go your separate way. I've created a new friend and you know a little bit about what I do. There's no need for drama or anything like that. Number 3 is I ask for exclusivity. It's like if you were to go buy a house, you wouldn't hire 2 realtors to look around or poke around the same neighborhood. And if you can't agree to those 3, it's probably not a good fit. But that's, we start with a very short conversation. I give you a little bit of homework. Again, may take a half an hour. If you're an Army veteran, it may take you 45 minutes or an hour, but it doesn't take long. And then we just sit down and have a conversation like you and I are having. And it's a 2-way conversation. I mean, I have a script, some things I want to go over and dive into, but it's rather wide ranging. It's designed to be 2-way. And, at that point, I write a report. It's about a 4 or 5 narrative of where you've been in your life, where you want to get to, and that sort of thing. And then once you give me the thumbs up on that, it's off to the races. I do a bunch of research. Probably the most important time I spend is researching companies. And then I start making introductions and we start walking through the process together. And that's basically it. I mean, I have all sorts of resources I love to refer. I mean, books and accountants and attorneys and, all those things. But, if it's not apparent to you yet, I mean, I'm very passionate about what I do. And it's very enjoyable to me to walk through the process. And, hopefully that's apparent.
Yeah, it is very clear, very evident. And again, it resonates with Phoenix Business RadioX and everything that I do as a business leader as well. Taking care of each other, right? And being upfront and transparent. Like, this is how I work, and these kind of the ground rules or the core values that I uphold. And if we're a fit, excellent. And if not, that's fine too. And like you, when we have folks who are interested in doing their own podcast and radio show with us, we say, come try it and let's have a conversation. What would that look like? If you decide it's not for you, you will be better informed. You will have some ideas that you may want to take with you, but we've made a connection. We've had friends, and hopefully you'll refer people for guest experiences. So again, just that giver's gain, I think, is what we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the specific qualifications. I know it, again, depends on the franchise and that sort of thing, but is there any general rule that or guideline around if any specific experience is needed for any given types of franchises?
Typically not.
Okay.
Typically, in fact, franchisors are not looking for people with, for example, trade experience. Like if it's a roofing franchise, they've figured out how to do roofing and in a profitable manner, in a way that's sustainable and scalable and profitable, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want a bunch of roofers coming and telling them, no, this is how you hold the hammer or the nails or that sort of thing. Right. So typically not. That said, there are examples. For example, it's not unhelpful to have food experience if you're going to be buying a restaurant. Not necessary in most cases, but but that wouldn't necessarily hurt you. What they're looking for, again, there are all sorts of franchises. There are over 4,000 franchises in the country today. And we like to say we represent the top 10%.
But the price reality, ranges, right? The group that you represent, the top portion of those franchises with the well-known brands and the consistency and all that, is there also a price range there as well as far as buying in and becoming a franchisee?
Right, and that's what I was driving to. There's, for example, it's a continuum. We typically don't work with franchises that have less than, say, a $50,000 or a $35,000 investment level. Mm-hmm. And we don't work with hotels, which are typically the other extreme.
Okay.
But, investment levels is one way to look at concepts. Another is what kind of model? I mean, there are business-to-business models. There are business-to-consumer. There are simple retail. I mean, a lot of people come to me and they're thinking, well, Subway or, speedy oil change. I mean, again, great, interesting concepts. But they're not even the tip of the iceberg. They're the white on the iceberg. I mean, they're the white on the rice, or whatever. There's so many different models, and so many different concepts. I've got a friend who owns 3 waxing franchises, and he does them on a part-time basis. He has a W-2 job and he has another part-time gig. Very, very highly compensated individual, but he spends about 15 hours a month managing them and managing the managers. So
Smart.
There's all sorts of time commitments. And what this speaks to is getting to understand my clients to the point where, hey, this has a history of really supporting their semi-absentee owners, or you want to be an owner operator, you want to replace your job and build something for the future. Well, here's a concept. It could be really profitable, and then off to the races we go.
Yeah.
So
I'm fascinated by the conversation because, to go back to one of your earliest points, being here in the United States, we have an opportunity to have abundance. Easier for some than others, not saying that that's not the case. But if you set your sights on whatever your dream and your passion is, there's likely a business opportunity there for you, and franchise might very well be the way to do that. I know several folks who have worked a long time as engineers with the larger companies, and always kind of putting some money away so that one day, as they begin to want to step away and retire from whatever their 9-to-5 gig is, they will have something, again, to put in its place. And I'm seeing more and more people make that commitment, starting off with the consistency of a salaried position after going 4 years to school, that sort of thing. But again, the opportunity is there for so many. How do people get in touch with you? You're on LinkedIn, and then there's a website as well. What's the best way, Steve, for our listeners to say, hey, I just would love to engage in a conversation and see if it's a fit for us?
Probably the easiest way, and this, you're going to kill me, but my email address is stevetaylor@thefranchiseconsultingcompany.com. And I understand that's a very long email address.
Well, but we're so used to that. That's okay. I'm not going to kill you. So it's Steve Taylor, STEVE, of course, Taylor, TAYLOR, at thefranchiseconsultingcompany.com. Mine's almost as long, so you're in good company. So send Steve an email and make that introduction. And again, an open invitation to just schedule time together and have a conversation to explore, to see what makes the most sense, and then run from there, right? I think it's that easy. And then there is a website as well. I'm looking kind of through my notes. SteveTaylorFranchiseExpert.com.
Yes, ma'am.
As another great place to go. And then on LinkedIn, we have you as P. Stephen Taylor. That's the
Correct.
Best way to find you on LinkedIn. A lot of our folks like to, kind of show up and follow folks on social media. And I see you're also on Twitter and Instagram, which is super cool. The FCC East Bay. Love that. And then Instagram, Steve Taylor, trusted franchise expert. I have not gotten to look at all those. I checked out the website and, of course, got familiar with who you are with the guest form you so graciously submitted for us. So I can't wait to go and learn more and stay in touch. Is there anything, Steve, that I hadn't thought to ask that you really came today kind of wanting our listeners to know about you and the world of franchise?
I think, a lot of my business has been over the last year or so has been more and more directed, working with companies who want to convert into a franchise system, become franchisor. And I would love to have business conversation. There's some very compelling reasons to look at that. If you've got a small business, I would like, if anybody has any questions about that or wants to reach out, I would love to have a discussion around that. I genuinely enjoy talking about small business, and like I said, there's some very, very compelling discussions to be had around that.
Many businesses lend themselves to that duplication, right? If we can finally step away from being the one who does everything in the business and develop that team and those systems and the structure, then it would likely make sense to be able to duplicate, and franchising may be the opportunity to do that. And we really didn't have a chance to focus much on that today, but I love that you mentioned that. But reach out to you the same way, right? Through Gmail, LinkedIn, your website, and engage in a conversation. Now, of course, I go to the way that we are as connectors here at Business RadioX. I'm already like, okay, well, have you created a webinar? Do you meet with chambers and the SCORE? I don't know if SCORE is a national thing. I know it's here in Arizona.
It is a national thing.
Yeah. So it would be fascinating to have that exposure for you as that expert as it relates to franchise and help get those questions answered. So certainly can do it one-on-one. And if there's anything we can do to help make those connections and have you make those connections on a broader and wider basis all at once, we'd love to see if we can help you do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So again, you've had an opportunity to connect with Steve Taylor today with the Franchise Consulting Company. And we are grateful for the opportunity to introduce you to Steve, because that's what we do here at Business RadioX. We connect you with the right people and help build your business. I'm Karen Nowicki. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Mac 6 Entrepreneurial Center. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business. Until next time, take care. Thanks for listening.